अस्सलाम वालेकुम। प्रोग्राम एम्बेसी रोड में खुश आमदीद। नाज़रीन, आज हमारी मेहमान हैं एंडी आइवमी, जो कि रीजनल मैनेजर हैं यूके बॉर्डर एजेंसी की, और ये इनका ताल्लुक है इमिग्रेशन से, और जो लोग बरतानिया जाते हैं उनके लिए वीज़ा किस तरह इशू होता है और क्या तरीक़ाकार है, इनकी क्या पॉलिसी है वीज़ा के हवाले से। और ये ज़िम्मेदार हैं पाकिस्तान और गल्फ और ईरान के हवाले से जो वीज़ा इशू होता है उसके मामलात से इनका ताल्लुक है, और ये रीजनल मैनेजर हैं। आज हमारी मेहमान है, उनसे पूछेंगे कि जो इस वक्त यूके की यानी बरतानिया की क्या पॉलिसी है वीज़ा के हवाले से। इन्होंने कुछ तब्दीलियां की हैं इमिग्रेशन लॉ के अंदर, वो क्या तब्दीलियां हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच मैम। We begin by knowing that what changes are being brought about in the immigration laws which will affect people here in Pakistan.
There are quite a few changes being introduced on the 9th of July which are global changes, so they affect everyone from every country in the world outside of the European Union. The ones that will affect Pakistanis the most are, first of all, the change to people who want to go and live in the UK. So, for example, for Pakistan, this is often people who want to go and join a husband or a wife or a fiancé or a partner to go and live permanently in the UK. And from the 9th of July, anyone who wants to do that will have to show... This is called
the settlement issue.
Exactly, it's called settlement, living permanently in the UK. So from the 9th of July, anyone who wants to go and live with their sponsor, the person in the UK, will need to show that their sponsor earns a certain amount of money before they can qualify to go to join them. And that amount of money, just for one person coming from overseas, is £18,600. So that means that the person in the UK, we'll call them the sponsor, has to earn £18,600 in order to sponsor a fiancé, a husband, a wife or a partner from overseas. Exactly.
Right. But if a child is added to that, then this threshold of money goes up?
It does, yes. The threshold goes up for one child to £22,400, and then it goes up incrementally per child. But it might make more sense if I explain what the logic is. It's not a tax or a fine or anything like that. You know, we recognise that people can get married to whoever they want to get married to. The important thing that this government believes is that if someone wants to bring their partner, their spouse from overseas, that they should be able to support themselves. It's not for the British taxpayer to support people coming from overseas. And that same logic is true for children. So, for example, a child coming from overseas will go into school in the UK. There'll be extra costs, social costs in the UK, and it's important that the taxpayer doesn't pay for those. So that's the logic behind the income threshold. When the government decided to bring it in, it didn't just come up with an arbitrary number. It commissioned an independent body called the Migration Advisory Committee, which is populated by academics, international experts, people who have nothing to do with immigration law and you know, the border agency. And the Migration Advisory Committee looked at lots of different calculations, very complicated calculations about how you would assess what the right threshold is. And it said that the threshold for someone to bring in a spouse or a partner from overseas should be between £18,600 and £25,000. And the government decided to go for the lower end of that threshold, £18,600, rather than the higher end.
Right. There's another complaint generally in Pakistan that when they apply for visas, various types of visas, their applications are delayed. I mean, the response is delayed and they get frustrated. Is there any reason behind that, or there are specific time periods for every category of visa that is issued by UK High Commission?
We work for the civil service, so we're the public sector. So as you would expect, we have targets. We have global targets, so whichever country you work in, and I've worked in many countries overseas, the targets are the same. So the service we provide to customers is the same here as it is in Russia, China, India, our other big significant markets. Exactly. So if I quote statistics at you, if you excuse me for quoting statistics at you, if someone is applying to visit the UK or to work or to study in the UK, then our global target is to deal with 90% of applications within 3 weeks. Now, we translate that because 90% just sounds very bureaucratic. So we say that we aim to deal with most applications within 3 weeks. Now 3 weeks is actually not a very long time. If you're planning an expensive holiday or to go to your cousin's wedding in the UK or a big business trip, people tend to know more than 3 weeks in advance that they're going to the UK. So we would encourage people very, very much to allow enough time for the visa application as well. Don't just think that the visa application is the thing you do before you get on the flight. And the best advice I would give people is don't buy a ticket before your visa has been issued, because sometimes there are problems, sometimes we need to do more checks, sometimes there are computer problems. So don't buy that ticket, particularly if it's not refundable, before your visa is issued.
But if you need to fast track the process of visa issuance, there are emergency cases, someone who wants to go to UK for treatment or something, there is an emergency. Is there a procedure available or a mechanism available for processing visas quickly?
We do have a mechanism. It's not just for people who have to go, unfortunately, for medical treatment or a family emergency, but we recognise that lots of business people suddenly need to travel at the last minute, and there's a huge amount of trade between our two countries. You know, we're very, very much open for business. So we've very recently introduced the new priority visa service, and it means that if you've travelled to the UK within the last 2 years, and you're applying for a visit visa, then you can apply for the new priority visa service, and we will try to deal with your application within 5 working days. So it's a big jump from 15 working days to 5 working days, and we charge an additional fee for that because it takes more resources for us, and the additional fee on top of the visa application fee is 8,400 rupees, which is broadly on a par to the fee that we charge in our other big markets in the Gulf, in India, in Russia.
The Pakistani visa seekers, they're also complaining about, there are so many hurdles, like the language for the interviews, and then they also talk about other things. There are some agents here in Pakistan who approach them, who talk to them, and then assure them that they will be helpful to them in the issuance of these visas. So what is being done by your agency to make it more convenient for the people to get visas?
That's a big question. Let me start first with your point about agents. Yes. We know that there are many, many unscrupulous agents out there. They are nothing more than fraudsters. They are trying to con people out of their money. If somebody promises that they can get you a visa, it doesn't matter where they say they're from, and they're trying to take money from you, they're lying. If they tell you that if you give them a bit of extra money to someone and sort it out, they're lying.
They can't influence.
They absolutely cannot influence. Okay. The only person who can make a decision on a visa application is a UK trained visa officer. That's the only person. No one else can influence a decision. So anybody who says that they can is lying, and they should be reported to the authorities. We do a lot of checks on applications. We recognise that there are huge numbers of journeys between the UK and Pakistan every year. Something in the region of 1.4 million journeys between the UK and Pakistan. The vast majority of people go to the UK to do exactly what they say they're going to do. They go to their cousins' weddings, they go on business, they study.
Very few of them cheat.
Very few of them cheat in percentage terms, but because so many Pakistanis go to the UK, 1%, 2% amounts to a lot of people. And we see that although Pakistan is the 5th largest nationality in terms of visa applications, it is the top nationality by some long way in terms of illegal migration to the UK. So in UK border agency terms, Pakistanis represent quite a high risk to the UK. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we don't issue visas to Pakistanis. I think it would surprise people to know that last year, 2011, we received about 155,000 applications from Pakistanis, and we issued about 75% of them. So the vast majority of people who applied for a visa got the visa, and they got it within our global published customer service standards. But there are people who seek to abuse our system. They put in forged documents, they tell lies on their application forms, and those people we try to identify, and we do more checks on those applications. So sometimes people will do it off their own bat. sometimes a fraudulent agent will try to persuade them to do it. But where we find a forged document or we find that someone has lied, then we will refuse their application, we'll ban them from applying for a visa for up to 10 years, and we'll quite often pass the information on to the law enforcement agencies.
Here in Pakistan.
In Pakistan. So my message would absolutely be, it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. You don't need to go the illegal route.
Madam, the marriages issue, there were reports that sham marriages are taking place, paper marriages are taking place, in which a lot of people are involved. How are you going to prevent this practice?
Pakistan is not the only country, by any stretch, where people are exploited or take part in sham marriages or paper marriages. But one of the new changes that comes into effect on the 9th of July is that when you get to the UK to join your husband or wife, at the moment you have to live there for 2 years and then you can apply to live permanently in the UK. The change that comes in from the 9th of July is that rather than 2 years, you have to be there for 5 years. Now, 5 years is a very, very long time to be in a sham marriage. So that gives us much more chance to root out those people who are trying to abuse the immigration system so that we can refuse their applications and remove them from the UK. But I should be very clear that there's a real difference, and sometimes the press, perhaps in the UK, don't always pick up on this, a real difference between a sham marriage, a forced marriage and an arranged marriage. And our staff who make decisions on applications are very, very culturally aware, and they live in Pakistan, of the importance of arranged marriages.
We'll continue this discussion, very interesting. नाज़रीन, एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं। वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में जो इलाकाई रीजनल मैनेजर हैं यूके बॉर्डर एजेंसी की, उनसे मजीद गुफ्तगू जारी रखेंगे इन सवालात के साथ कि क्या जो इमिग्रेशन लॉज में जो तब्दीलियां आ रही हैं बरतानिया में, उससे हमारे जो पाकिस्तानी भाई हैं या बहनें हैं वो किस हद तक मुतासर होंगी। Welcome back. The agents, you were talking about some unscrupulous people who cheat the Pakistanis. Have you been able to get them punished, penalized by the Pakistani authorities so that they are discouraged and stop this illegal practice?
Before I answer your question, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are good agents as well as unscrupulous agents. So if people want to take advice on making a visa application, then they should make sure that if they're charged a fee, it's a reasonable one, and the agent isn't promising them an unreasonable outcome, making guarantees.
What is a good agent?
A good agent is somebody who perhaps doesn't accept all their clients, who will say to somebody, I can't help you, I'm afraid. There is no way you can do that and go to the UK. A good agent is somebody who doesn't say, I promise I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And a good agent is somebody who is not trying to take a lot of money from somebody. But bad agents will lie, they will cheat, they will promise things that they cannot possibly deliver, and they will try and take a lot of money from people. Now your question was, what have we done about this? We have had a lot of success working with the Pakistani authorities to combat illegal migration, including dealing with unscrupulous agents and criminal gangs. And we've mounted prosecutions in the UK, successful prosecutions in the UK, to take out the UK end of the operation. Many of these organisations aren't just small, one person running a little criminal outfit. They're big organised crime outfits that people are being taken advantage of. So we take action in both Pakistan and the UK.
And UK, on both sides.
Very much.
Right.
Very much.
The student visas, a lot of Pakistanis go for studies to UK, and it becomes very scandalous sometimes, when the people get the student visas or the study visas for UK. Many of them do not go for studies, but they start doing something else. So how are you going to check it?
There have been a lot of changes in the legislation around student applications over the last couple of years, exactly for the reasons that you've outlined. And also because in the UK there have been colleges who are pretending to deliver courses that they don't deliver, unscrupulous colleges.
Yes.
So there have been problems on both sides. And I should stress that it's not just Pakistanis. Lots of other nationalities have abused the student system. So over the last year or so, the rules have been tightened up very much, so that people have to evidence a certain standard of English. They have to have a certain letter from the college, and so on. You know, there have been significant changes. One of the issues that we face in Pakistan is, as I mentioned to you earlier, Pakistan is at the top by some way of the number of illegal migrants in the UK. And we know that in the past the student route has been a vehicle for people to go to the UK. So what we are doing now is interviewing most students to check that they are who they say they are, that they have done what they say they have done, and that their English language is the standard that they say it is. So I'm pleased to say that the interviews that have taken place so far, most people have been perfectly honest, you know, and are entitled to a visa. But a small but significant percentage have not been honest, and we are refusing their applications. So I would say to anyone who is thinking of applying as a student to the UK, go to a decent agent, speak to the British Council, make sure your application is well prepared. But if you are thinking about submitting forged documents or lying about your qualifications, don't waste your money, because we will refuse your application.
Some important people from Pakistan, from various walks of life, when they don't get visas for reasons of your laws, your laws come in your way, and they complain and they think that they have been insulted or something like this. So what will you say about that?
I'd say two things to that. First of all, I would say that all of our customers are important. They all pay a fee, and the fee is set in the UK by the UK's Parliament, so it's the same fee in every country. But we absolutely recognise that in many countries, and Pakistan is one of them, it's a really expensive process. So someone paying a lot of money deserves respect, whatever the outcome of their decision is. So all of our customers are important. When it comes to people saying that it's not fair, I didn't agree with your decision and so on, depending on what people apply for, there are different routes that they can go down to air their grievances. So sometimes they have a right of appeal, sometimes they have another route, sometimes they need to make a fresh application. But we're very clear that the law we apply is the same law for everybody.
You applied indiscriminately.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
The student, coming back to the student issue, some colleges or educational institutions back in UK have been penalized, I believe, for these corrupt practices. So do you think that it has created a difference now?
Yes, very much. We've noticed over the last year that many of the poor colleges who were masquerading as proper institutions have been struck off our register of approved providers, so they can no longer try and take money from students who want to go to the UK. But equally, at the other end of the spectrum, there are colleges and sponsors who are so good and so efficient that they are highly trusted sponsors. And so there are both ends of the spectrum. So we've really improved our partnership work with the colleges and the institutions at the top end of the spectrum, and we've really cracked down at the bottom end of the spectrum too. So the improvements have been noticeable.
For the Pakistani community living in UK, a big number, but they are from certain areas, like Mirpur and other areas. So they have been encouraging people from a certain area, because they were already there in UK, settled there, doing business, and sometimes they had the nationality also. So they were encouraging people from certain areas. So it looks that people from Pakistan have been going from a certain area, but not broadly from various provinces of Pakistan, various regions of Pakistan. Do you take note of that?
I'm not in any way an expert on demographics at all. So it makes no difference to us where somebody comes from. They either meet the requirements of the immigration rules or they don't meet the requirements of the immigration rules. they get a visa, they don't get a visa. What we have noticed when we've done analysis around where people who seek to cause the UK harm by breaking our laws have come from is we've noticed and we don't want to see that. We want people who are coming to the UK to integrate, which doesn't mean assimilate, to integrate into our communities and be able to play a full part in the community. And for that they need at least a basic standard of English. And the standard of English that we're looking for with the English language test really is not very much more than a basic standard. We're not looking for academics.
Right, but the facility to learn English, at least the functional language that you require, any facilities provided by the High Commission or the British Council or anybody else, or you don't make it conditional for anyone to go to this institution or that institution to improve your language?
No, you're quite right to ask that. We don't say that someone has to go to a particular institution. We say that we will accept certain qualifications. So we will accept, for example, IELTS and TOEFL qualifications, and there are others. Where you choose to learn and study those is up to you.
Right. So you don't specify any institution for learning?
Not here, no.
Right.
No.
We'll continue this discussion. नाज़रीन एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम यूके यानी बरतानिया के जो इमिग्रेशन के कवानीन हैं उनमें जो कुछ तब्दीलियां की जा रही हैं 9 जुलाई से इस साल से इमिग्रेशन के कवानीन में तब्दीलियां हो रही हैं, वो तब्दीलियां किस तरह पाकिस्तानी माशरे पर असरअंदाज होंगी और वो लोग जो पाकिस्तान से बरतानिया जाना चाहते हैं उन पे इसके क्या असरात होंगे, इस पे मजीद बातचीत जारी रहेगी। Welcome back. Have you noticed any decline or increase of people going to UK? You know, there was a time when everybody wanted to be in UK for good life. But have you noticed that some economic prosperity in Pakistan or opportunities in Pakistan have some way decreased this trend?
I've noticed two things very recently. Firstly, that with the forthcoming changes in the immigration rules, which will affect people who want to live in the UK permanently, we've seen a huge increase in the number of people applying to go to live in the UK permanently. So just to give you some context, we usually see about, 30, 40 applications a day for people going to live in the UK permanently. At the moment, over the last month or so, we're seeing about 300, 400 a day. So our global processing target, coming back to the bureaucratic statistics, is to process most settlement applications within 3 months and all of them within 6 months. Now, we're still processing a lot of them within 3 months, but not as many as we would like, because this spike in applications means we couldn't possibly keep pace with it. So I would ask people to make sure if they're putting in settlement applications, allow us time. We should have them processed within 6 months, and we're trying to get more staff focused on that work, but they must allow enough time. We can't rush these things. It's important to us to provide a first-rate service, but we will never ever cut corners on the checks that we need to do. I said I've noticed two areas. The other area that I've noticed is an increase in people going to the UK as business visitors. And I think that is probably a reflection of the trade between our two countries at different levels. Yeah, at different levels, at a macro level and at a much smaller level. And that's got to be good news for both countries.
Would you like to have educated people, skilled people, young people in UK from Pakistan, or the old trend has been that illiterate people, workers who could work in factories and hotels and restaurants, they used to go to UK. So would you like, through these immigration laws changes, encourage young, educated, bright people to go to UK?
I think young, educated, bright people will always want to go where the opportunities are, whether that's in their own country or perhaps temporarily overseas. And certainly the UK is very much open to the brightest and the best. Baroness Worsey, when she was here on a visit recently, talked about when her father came to the UK and how it was a very, very different time then. And now, if someone in his position wanted to come to the UK, there would be no job for him. The UK doesn't need unskilled, untrained workers. It's times of austerity for everyone, and we don't need those workers from overseas. So I would encourage people, the brightest and the best, if you like, to look at the opportunities available in the UK, as well as in Pakistan, as well as in their other countries, and we'd certainly welcome them.
The current economic situation in UK, does that discourage people in any way not to go there, because the chances are not good at the moment? There's an economic depression, unemployment rate is increasing. So is that tendency discouraging people from Pakistan to go there?
My honest answer is I don't know. I don't know if that discourages people from Pakistan, from other countries, but I would want to get the message across very clearly is the streets are not paved with gold in the UK. Despite what people will tell you, what agents will tell you, the streets are not paved with gold. We have a lot of people looking for work, graduates who can't get jobs. 52 graduates, our latest media reports say, 52 graduates apply for every job that's advertised. So the streets are very much not paved with gold at the moment.
What does your study or analysis tell you about the people from Pakistan, the young students who went there, educated themselves in the British institutions? Did they come back in majority to Pakistan, or they tried to settle there in UK?
I don't think I can give you chapter and verse on that analysis. What I can tell you is if you look around at many of the business people here, the politicians, the active media people, and look at how many of them studied in the UK, I think that gives you your answer. Many, many of them studied in the UK and have come back to contribute to Pakistan.
Right. Olympic event is being organized by UK, and Pakistani players, athletes, they will go there to take part in this huge event. You think that special visa arrangements are there for the people to go there, for players, for those who want to witness these matches and these competitions?
I'm very excited about this actually, because I'm from London, so London 2012 has a special resonance for me. Globally there are processes in place for the Olympic families, so the players and other members of the Olympic families, to be processed quickly and prioritised at every stage in the process, so that their journey is as fantastic as it possibly can be. We are seeing applications from people who want to go and watch part of the Olympics, who perhaps have tickets. And again, I would say to people, as I said a little earlier, allow plenty of time for your application to be processed. We say 3 weeks, although if you have travelled in the last couple of years to the UK and you want to apply for the priority service, you can of course do so, but you don't need to if you just want to wait a couple of weeks. But we hope that everyone who wants to go and watch the Olympics is able to go and do so.
Are there any other consideration in granting visas, especially for this Olympic event? Are there the security considerations there, because there are threats emanating from here and there? Some people would like to disrupt this whole thing, So are you conscious of that? You are taking note of it?
We take security very, very seriously. Not just at the Olympics time, although it's a higher security environment than usual, but all the time. And we look very, very closely at all aspects of every visa application. But you wouldn't expect me to go into detail about exactly what we look at.
Right. Coming back to this priority visa issue, which other categories you consider for priority treatment?
At the moment, we're only offering the priority visa service to people applying for visit visas. And the reason for that is, if we say we aim to process your application within 5 working days, which is what we do say, then we need to know that we can manage that demand and that we can deliver on that promise. If we open that fast-track service to every category, then there is every chance we wouldn't be able to deliver on that demand. We can't bring everyone to the front of the queue. So we want to be able to be very honest with people about what they can expect and what they can't expect. But I think the service that we offer for other categories, which again is global processing time, so for anyone going to the UK to visit, to work, to study, we aim to process most applications within 3 weeks. I think that's pretty competitive, and we certainly do a lot of analysis of what other countries are offering in Pakistan and our competitors in other countries overseas, and that's pretty competitive.
3 weeks, right. So anybody who wants to invest in UK from Pakistan, huge amount of investment, will he be given a priority treatment and his visa will be treated on fast track basis?
Someone who wants to invest in the UK will generally apply under what we call the points-based system, Tier 1 of the points-based system, and our processing time for those is most applications within 3 weeks. So we will deal with most of those applications within 3 weeks, hopefully to free up the investor to go and invest a lot of money in the UK.
What about the people who want to do business in UK? Like, they're not big investors, but they just want to go there and set up small businesses there. Are they considered for priority treatment or priority visa issuance?
The priority visa service is just for people applying for visit visas. So it depends what the individuals want to do, because some business visits would mean they could avail of the priority service. If they want to go and set up in business, that's a whole different area of legislation. So we would still process the applications within 3 weeks, but they wouldn't be able to avail of the priority service. But again, I'm not trying to encourage people to use the priority visa service. 3 weeks, I think, is a very reasonable time. So I would suggest people just allow enough time. They don't need to pay for a fast track service.
Another short break. नाज़रीन एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम बरतानिया के जो इमिग्रेशन कवानीन है उनमें जो तब्दीली आ रही है उसके हवाले से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू हम जारी रखेंगे. Welcome back. The applications which are submitted to you or your staff for processing visa applications, how do you basically treat them and how do you process them? What is the initial activity there?
We introduced earlier on this year, as part of our drive to provide Pakistanis with a much better service, we introduced online applications in Pakistan, and it's been very successful. That brings Pakistan in line with our other big significant markets, so Russia, China, India, Nigeria. People apply online by visiting our website. The application process is very simple, it's automated, so it walks you through it. Once they've made their application and hit send, they print off a copy of their application and then make an appointment to go to a visa application centre. Now, in I think about 80% of the world, we work with a commercial partner, and here our commercial partner is Jerry's. And Jerry's
collect these applications.
Exactly. They do the administrative part for us, so they're not involved in any way in decision making. They take in people's applications, take their biometrics, take photographs, and then at the end of the process, when we've made our decisions,
biometrics
they hand
is
them
done
back.
At Jerry's?
That's right.
Okay. Previously, it used to be in this office or the immigration office.
We've never taken biometrics at the High Commission. We shifted to Jerry's before we started taking biometrics, and part of the reason for that, I've been in Pakistan before, as I think I mentioned to you. I was in Pakistan 10 years ago, so I'm particularly pleased to be back here. Is that we recognise that Pakistan's a very big country, and actually, for a lot of people, it's really inconvenient to have to travel to the capital or a city to make an application. It's for the convenience
of the applicants.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have 4 visa application centres in Pakistan, in Islamabad, Lahore, Mirpur and Karachi. So people go to whichever application centre is most convenient to them to make their application.
What about Peshawar and Quetta?
There are security issues for us around Peshawar and Quetta. It's something that we are keeping an eye on. And one day it would be great to be able to open up application centres there, but at the moment that's just not possible.
I was reading this immigration changes, prospective immigration changes, and there is a mention of appeal system, and there's also a mention that the UK Parliament will debate it and will grant the right to appeal, full appeal. So what is this?
At the moment, if you are going to visit a family member in the UK and your visa application is refused, you'll receive a notice, a letter, which explains in detail why you didn't meet the requirements of our immigration rules. And at the moment, if you're going to visit a family member, you will have a right of appeal against that. The definition of family member right now is huge. You know, it's not just parents and brothers and sisters, it's cousins and aunts and uncles. It's a huge definition. And when this right of appeal was introduced over 10 years ago, the aim behind it was that where somebody, for example, was going to a wedding, very short notice, and their application was refused, they would have a quick right of appeal, and a decision would be made, maybe the refusal would be overturned, to allow them to travel to the wedding. Well, that's not how the system works now. Family visit appeals now take up about 30% of the court time in the UK. And the government's calculations are that by changing, and I'll talk in a moment about how those changes will work, by changing that and possibly removing the right of appeal completely, that will save in the region of £10 million over 10 years, which is a huge amount of money, as well as saving a huge amount of court time in the UK. So the changes are that on the 9th of July, the definition of family member changes, it shrinks slightly. So it still includes parents and grandparents and grandchildren and brothers and sisters and your spouse's parents, brothers and sisters, but it doesn't include cousins and further out relatives. So what does that mean? It means that if you are applying to go to visit one of these family members and that family member is settled in the UK, if your application is refused, you still have a right of appeal. If you are applying to visit a family member who doesn't come within that new definition, then you don't have a right of appeal.
Right. This new definition of family members, has it been made public?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so it's available for
yes.
people, and they would be able to understand
Absolutely.
that who comes under this definition.
Exactly.
Let's say.
Exactly.
Also, the people complain that the visa fee is too big, like 2 years visa fee, 5 years, 10 years. I've heard people talking about it. They're saying it's huge amount, and the British High Commission is making a lot of money through these visa fees. What would you say about that?
Unfortunately, the British High Commission is not making any money at all. The UK's visa fees are set in the UK's Parliament, and they're set in sterling. So if you're applying for a visit visa from Pakistan, from America, from Russia, from Jamaica, from Australia, you will pay exactly the same fee.
Okay.
And the logic
There's no
behind
discrimination.
No, absolutely not. The logic behind that is that the government feels that people who want to avail of a service should pay for the service, that it wouldn't be right to have that service subsidised by the taxpayer, which would be what would happen if we were to reduce the fee. So people using the service pay for the service, and globally that's what it costs us to run a migration and immigration system.
There was a trend in Pakistan previously, I'm not aware what's happening now. People would go for political asylum. They would seek political asylum on one pretext or the other. Is there any change about this giving the political asylum to people in UK?
Pakistan is, at the moment, it's the top asylum producing nationality, which means more Pakistanis claim asylum in the UK than anywhere else, than any other nationality. The vast majority of those cases are unfounded. They are found by the UK border agents to be unfounded, and that is upheld at appeal by the independent judiciary. And then we remove those people who have claimed asylum and have no basis for their stay in the UK. So I would strongly discourage people from going those illegal routes to the UK, because once their cases have been heard and they have no further right to remain in the UK, we will return them to Pakistan.
Right. And there used to be a process previously when people were able to get visas here from Islamabad. They were again put to a process of scrutiny, and they would be refused to an entry into UK at the airport. Is this process still there?
I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, there is a process where if someone has a visa issued overseas and they travel to the UK, there is still a way in which their application may not be they may not be given leave to enter the UK, but there are very narrow criteria for that. So, for example, if your circumstances change significantly, perhaps you apply for a student visa, you go to the UK, and the college has closed down. You have no intention of studying. Then your visa application, your application at the border could be refused. So there are very narrow criteria. The whole point of the visa service overseas is to pre-clear people to travel, so they've got the certainty that they can buy their tickets and enjoy their trip to the UK.
Thank you very much. नाज़रीन, आज हमने गुफ्तगू की है यूके बॉर्डर एजेंसी की जो रीजनल मैनेजर हैं यहाँ पे मैंडी आइवमी से, और उन्होंने हमें बताया है कि जो कवानीन में तब्दीली आ रही है इमिग्रेशन कवानीन में उसका नतीजा क्या निकलेगा। पाकिस्तान से जो लोग जाना चाहते हैं बरतानिया, उन पर क्या असरात मरतब होंगे, उन्हें किस तरह की सहूलतें या मुश्किलात उनके सामने हायल होंगी, और वो किस तरह इन मुश्किलात पर काबू पा सकते हैं और रुकावटों को दूर कर सकते हैं। और उन्होंने अपनी इस गुफ्तगू में तफसीलन बता दिया है कि ये नए कवानीन जो हैं किस तरह असरअंदाज होंगे पाकिस्तान से जाने वाले लोगों के लिए जो बरतानिया जाना चाहते हैं, वहाँ पर सेटल होना चाहते हैं, कारोबार करना चाहते हैं, तालीम के लिए, स्टडी के लिए जाना चाहते हैं, उनके लिए अब क्या क्या जो है मामलात होंगे, किस तरह वो वहाँ पे पहुँच सकेंगे, और क्या कवानीन में तब्दीलियाँ उनके लिए असरात जो हैं वो मरतब करेंगी। इसी के साथ ये प्रोग्राम ख़त्म होता है। जावेद सिद्दीक को इजाज़त दीजिए। खुदा हाफिज़। थैंक यू वेरी मच मैडम। इट्स अ प्लेजर टू सी। थैंक यू।